taste a sample of the world of Axial. The Axial Disc 1 demo contains all of the content of the first chapters of Axial, featuring a unique battle system that revolves heavily on customization and synergy to adapt to challenges. With its enthralling story, unique pixel art, Game Boy aesthetic, and energetic chiptune soundtrack, Axial is the perfect game for fans of classic JRPGs. Data from the demo can be transferred to the final game. Follow Axial on Twitter at AxialRPG. That's AXIAL RPG.
Okay, here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are now listening to RPG Maker Cola.
Hey RPG Maker Cola listeners, welcome to RPG Maker Cola Season 2. Yes, we are a soft drink company and peddler. Yes, this is just one giant advertisement for a game development concoction or potion that you're just beginning to consume right now on, say, a hot summer's day or a cold summer's day or a cold winter's day. I'm not sure how it works, but I sell it to you because it's good for you. $2.99 per elixir. It heals 20 HP, 30 MP. Okay, maybe not that much, but what are you trying to do? I'm just a mere shopkeeper trying to earn his way. You better know it's RPG Maker Cola, fizzy soda-filled source of content for game development opinions that mean very little in the grand scheme of things. It's your favorite RPG Maker podcast, RPG Maker Cola. I'm your host Benny, also known as Cash, also known as the Puzzle Snob, also known as your star-stealing principal, your master of the Wendigos, and this is the place for you. It's a chill space where we get together skilled developers from the RPG Maker community to chat cordially and occasionally non-cordially about game development, game design, and probably a whole bunch of unrelated other stuff too. It's casual, it's cool, it's cola. Today I have two guests who I have greatly admired from afar and respected throughout my game development career. Well, if you can call it that. In fact, early on when I joined the site of rpgmaker.net, I have admired their games, which stood like glistening silos upon hills, beckoning me towards the fickle pleasures of game development and design. Very early on, just calling me in. Very deceptive. Our first guest is the author of one such siren song I originally discovered through their slow yet meditative Star-Stealing Prince back in 2012 when I first joined the site of rpgmaker.net as a strapping young boy. I was merely begging for the dregs of the site's games and design tips until I came across this gorgeously artistic and atmospheric game. In a kingdom covered in snow, in a kingdom where the snow never melts and never goes away, there lives a prince who keeps watch over his kingdom and resolves to maintain peace. When the prince learns that his family's history isn't quite as spotless as he'd been told, he endeavors to fix what his family had done wrong and to ensure the continual peace of his kingdom. This game started off with such a pleasant atmosphere, and then along with its charm came its challenge. Not exactly an easy game to complete, but very immersive and enchanting. It has extreme professionalism and immersion that cast its spell over the RPGmaker.net populace to win them over and nab many missiles in the process. That's the RPGmaker.net version of the Oscars, I guess, for RPG Maker games. And following that up came the immersive demos for the Sim RPG Homework Salesman with longtime collaborator Died Rupo, with an additional developer in Rhyme who also gained great amounts of praise for that project. And then after a reasonable hiatus, this developer has returned recently, this time in a different engine, using Ren'Py or Ren'Py, I'm not sure how to pronounce, to create a visual novel called The Morning Star. We play a character waking up in a field off a 2-lane highway with no single clue about how you got there to begin with. It's cold, the wind's bitter, and Alex simply can't remember what happened earlier in the night. And then things kind of escalate from there. Or not, I'm not sure, I haven't played it. We'll see. I'm excited for this return of a developer that I have seen and admired for a while, and proud to introduce the one, the only, Ronove. Hi, Ronove.
Hello. You're very nice. That was all glowing.
I've only got glowing things to say about Ronove.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for being on the podcast. I'm very pleased.
I'm glad to be here.
Our second guest is someone who has been traditionally seen as part of a duo development team as well. Well known for their classic and staple game Master of the Wind, a sweeping and swashbuckling epic about superheroes that took RPGmaker.net by storm via the release of its different arcs throughout the years, similarly sweeping up missiles just like Ronove's game Star-Stealing Prince. This game follows Cade Mistral and his best friend, a skeleton named Bones, working as armor merchants in the beautiful seaside town of Port Ariana. But unbeknownst to the townsfolk, Cade also protects them as a spear-wielding wind mage known as Shroud, and Bones joins him as Stoic, a mighty undead warrior who has lived through roughly 1,000 years of history. The game is exceptional. It has brilliant gameplay and a long, twisty story full of intrigue and possibility, and it really capitalizes on everything that the RPG Maker XP engine was meant to deliver and much, much more than that. So yeah, that's a classic game as well, and after an innovative and experimental investigation noir piece in X Noir, a short comedic romp called BroQuest made with Maki Okuta, and a deep and meaningful meditation on relationship and other deep emotional connections in the game Labyrinthine Dreams, and also having penned a dystopian novel named The World Beyond. What can't they do? This is a journalist or author with a fondness for RPG making and aversion to leaving projects unfinished, which by their own admission is great for satisfaction, not so much for quantity. It's the one, the only, Volrath. Hi, Volrath.
Thank you very much for that intro. And I can't whistle, so there's one thing.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the podcast to both of you. And dear listener, now that we're well acquainted with our guests, it is the Buzz Corner time. Welcome to the Buzz Corner, where we talk about what RPG Maker games or games and other engines are gaining buzz at the moment. I've told our guests if they can think of a game, to bring one game if they can to talk about that they're pretty interested in. They don't have to have played it, just something that looks interesting to them. I am bringing the game Yume Wheeky by Sooz. And the description's about, hey, do you know the game Yume Nikki? But what if it starred a little animal and didn't feature all that blood and stuff? You're a guinea pig. Your cage is pretty boss. It's got pellets, hay, water, and a buddy. And it's also got a comfy place for naps. You like napping. Apparently this is like a chill exploration game with original graphics and a soundtrack and some very cute little piggies. I think it's quite interesting that Sooz is a long-time member of RPGmaker.net, and they were like a co-creator of Remnants of Isolation, which won the Indie Game Maker contest, and they just decided to make a surreal expression game about a guinea pig. And the art in this looks pretty incredible. There's like different, just environments that they're just capitalizing upon their artistic ability. It looks like you turn into a ghost pig at one point, and you explore a painting, and then you're exploring your little cage with a feeder and a little water, I don't know what it's called, a feeder thing, and it looks like it's also got a sense of humor as well, because you enter like an art museum, and it's just this wacky and wild sort of. I'm still yet to be like a download, so I'm not sure whether they'll go into the horror elements too much, but it does say it's like a chill kind of space, and I'm wondering if it's like a sort of anti-Yume Nikki kind of game. I'm not too sure. Yume Nikki being like the seminal, exploration game created in the early days of RPG Maker. I think it looks really interesting. I'd like to check it out. Yeah. When the game comes out, I'd like to just go and have a download and explore the world of Yume Wheeky.
Also, that's a really good name.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
A good twist on the traditional formula, I suppose, of just taking one game and changing one of the words so that it rhymes.
Well, that's the sound the guinea pigs make, right? Wheeky? Is that what they call it?
Wheeky Pets is a company that apparently sells guinea pig stuff, or is Wheeky another name for a guinea pig?
I swear that's the squeaking sound they make.
Is that right. Is that why they call it that?
So it's even funnier.
Yeah. Okay, I get it now. I thought it was just a random word, but now I'm well acquainted.
Now you know.
Yeah, I really want to check this game out when it comes out. Ronove, what are you bringing to the Buzz Corner today?
Omori. Wow. It's recently came out on Christmas, as of the 25th. It's basically, you are this kid in this white space, and you leave it and go hang out with your friends. But obviously there's more to it than that. And I picked it because one of the reasons is one, it just came out, and two, I didn't actually realize it was still an RPG Maker game until I was like, hey, it is! It's amazing! But it's like a mashup of like Earthbound and Yume, which, goes with Yume Wiki.
Yeah.
So, if you like those two games, you probably really enjoy this one. It's very visually stunning.
Well, that one was in development for ages, wasn't it?
Yeah. Like, I've heard that it was like one of their issues was just jumping from VX to MV, but I have no idea. They should write a tell-all just to tell people what happened. Because I'd be interested in reading that.
Yeah, it's like you're like in a white space and you've been living there as long as you can remember, but then somehow you break out of into this colorful world. And it's been in production for a long time with Omocat on the like idea and art and stuff. And then Archeia, I think they did like a lot of the gameplay kind of stuff. So they're more like a developer, and they've got the team with Ocean and stuff.
They've got everybody.
Yeah, they've got great people developing behind it. But what I've heard is just that I think it was just like a scoping issue. Well, it was like they didn't realize, I think it was Omocat who didn't realize how big it was going to be and how long it was going to take. So they said something like, it'll be ready in a couple years or something. But then they didn't realize it was going to take, how long did it take? About 6 years, I think.
Since the Kickstarter.
Yeah, which all things considered, isn't that bad of a, development?
It's actually not bad, especially when you play the game and you see what all they did. Like, I was pretty much in awe. I'm like, wow, how'd they do that? Can they tell me? I would like to know.
And Omocat kind of released a statement about that, saying, like, it was the sort of thing where they were, like, getting a little bit, it felt, I was reading between the lines, but it felt they were getting a bit overwhelmed at, people asking stuff and having to provide development logs and things like that they just decided to not do that anymore. And I think that's why people started getting mad. They're like, where is this game? I bought this when I was in high school kind of thing. I want a refund. And it was just like it's that sort of difference in expectation between developers and players, where that players just think that games are made probably about 5 to 10 times faster, and with 5 to 10 times less effort than actually what goes in the process. So yeah, I think that's what happened here. And because by the time it was eventually released, it's like, I don't know, 50 hours. It's a long game. Wait, let me check how long.
Really, that long?
No, it's not. It's 20 hours. No, it's 20 hours.
I was gonna say.
20 hours.
Like, I clocked in just under 20.
If it were 50 hours, the 6-year development time would have been, like, amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. 20 hours, nothing to sneeze at. Still,
no, definitely not.
It's a big game. It's a big game.
Yeah, it's a really big. Like, I didn't even get to do everything that's there. Like, I keep looking at Twitter going, wait, where was that? How did I miss that? Because I have finished it.
And all the custom art and even animations and the everything that goes into it is just
it was very stunning.
Yeah, it just feels it's different. It's very different. At first, before it came out, I was like, oh, I really hope that it's not just another RPG Maker game. But then as soon as you get into it, it's like, okay, this is not just a reskinned, beautiful looking game with no gameplay underneath. There's something to this. There's something, there's something, and the story is deeper than just what you see, sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, go buy it and play it. It's important to RPG Maker as an engine, and I think you'll learn from it. Volrath, what do you bring to the BuzzCon today?
Well, I've been playing this game called Yuppie Psycho, and it's about a year old, although it only really came to my attention around Christmas time because Art Bain was playing it. I get a lot of random game recommendations from him. He's pretty on top of that stuff. Yeah. But so I got it, and I think anybody who kind of appreciated the themes of some of the later games I've done, like Labyrinth and Dreams, might like it. Although it's a lot different than Labyrinth and Dreams in a lot of ways, but just it's about work basically. And this guy goes to get a job at this big, powerful company, and he gets hired. He's not quite sure why it was so easy. And they tell him that he has to hunt down a witch that's cursed the company, and it only gets weirder from there. And it's basically like a survival horror game in the sense that, like, your character is very frail, your resources are limited, And there's all sorts of things that can jump out and just, beat the crap out of you. And I think what I like about it the most is that the character reacts to all this basically the way you'd expect a person would, all this surreal stuff. He's going around saying like, wow, there's like a spider monster like hiding in the library, and there's these sentient landmines that I can only disarm with pencils. What's going on? And all the other characters just kind of like accept it, like, yeah, strange stuff happens here, just the way it is. And
Another day in the office.
Yes, exactly. I think that's a really good metaphor for just kind of, if you've ever had like a corporate job, you sort of are expected to tolerate a lot of bullshit, for lack of a, I don't know, is this a G-rated podcast? Can I say
Yeah,
bullshit?
go ahead. Yeah, swear as much as you like.
Okay, great. You might regret saying that, but the stuff you're expected to swallow, it's like blatantly unfair, and I just think that's a really strong way to kind of examine that theme of just what we put up with for the sake of stability, for the sake of a job and an income, and it's good. It's really thought provoking. I'm going through it kind of slowly because it's on the difficult side. But I like it, so I'll be playing more of it soon.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it described somewhat as like a kind of bonkers horror themed office space, so to speak, like like a kind of like, it's like a corporate satire of sorts.
Yeah.
Where I'll read some features out where it's like assess health and safety, use different light methods to light your path and reveal what is breathing in the dark. Consider your 5-year goal. Only you can choose how the story will end, and engage in water cooler conversation. Investigate your co-workers and discover their sordid, blood-soaked secrets. So it seems like it's like an exaggerated like view of the dystopia of work life.
Well, only slightly.
Yeah, you don't have to really exaggerate it much for it to be a horror story. No, just kidding. Yeah, this seems like really interesting, quite a fun looking game. Yeah, go check Yuppie Psycho out, go buy it on Steam. Seems really fun. Yeah, so that's what's been buzzing for us at the moment. Yeah, those have been our games in the Buzz Corner, and now we're going to move on to our next section. We've been playing games. Maybe? Hey, have you been playing games?
Yes.
You there. I'm talking to you, passerby. Yes or no. There's two binary answer. I'm not putting you in a corner or anything. But have you? If not, that's all cool. If so, you can listen here as each of us talk about a game we've been currently playing or have played, and explained what we liked or disliked about it. No game is perfect. I'm going to bring a game called Karen, an Outrage simulator. Now, full disclosure, this is a game by another guest that has been on this podcast. It goes by the name of Justin Amercani, created with his wife, the creator of Always Sometimes Monsters. But however, this game is very interesting and kind of short and comedic and lighthearted. You play as Karen, and you argue your way through ridiculous scenarios, and you try and get everything you rightfully deserve in this short comedic game about entitlement. So basically, you go in with your side-swept haircut, and you demand to see the manager, and you do
you call the police on black kids selling lemonade?
Yeah. I mean, there'd be some sort of element of that as well. You go into a spa, and someone has accidentally asked for another slot, so you won't be able to get your slot, but you're not going to take that for an answer. It's not like these retail workers have no control over it. You're going to demand to speak to the manager and argue with the other client and make a big scene about it. But the funny way that this game works is that there are 3 meters: confidence, indifference, and patience, and they are in the employee's resolve. But you have to whittle that down, one of those stats down, to a bare minimum, without maximizing your own freak-out meter. Because if you start to freak out too much before you have whittled down the cashier's resolve, there is always going to be someone nearby with a phone to catch you freaking out. And then you become a meme, and that's the worst thing that a Karen can be. So, I thought it was a genius kind of convergence of gameplay and story considerations, where Karen's worst nightmare. One of the sections, one of my favorite sections, is where Karen asks to see the manager, and then in a kind of anime sequence, the employee reveals, I am the manager. And then there's some kind of dramatic twist that happens and they lock eyes and it's just really, really funny. I love this game. It's hilarious. I recommend go check it out. Go buy it on Steam. It's on sale now, but might not be it's not on sale in my country anymore. It was on sale. So just go buy it full price. It's $4 in my country. Not too much, but everyone has their own things. That's Karen in Outrage Simulator. Ronove, what games have you been playing? Maybe.
I've finished this since, you first asked me to do this, but it's the 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim. It's a video game developed by Vanillaware and published by Atlas, and it's for the PS4. It's divided between side-scrolling adventure segments and real-time strategy battles, and it follows 13 high school students in a fictionalized 1980s Japan who are dragged into a futuristic war between mechas and hostile kaiju in a non-linear narrative. It was fun. I hated the battle system, but everything else was great.
Yeah. Apparently, take control of 13 different characters.
Yes. It's
and
a lot.
They interact with each other to build a narrative. And I've heard this game's quite innovative as well. It does some things that are interesting and push the boundary a little.
A little bit. That meme with the guy with the dark circles under his eyes and the conspiracy board behind him? That's what it feels like putting the story together. Because when it says non-linear, it means non-linear.
Right.
But when you got it, you guess something and it's right and you start putting it all together, it's really rewarding.
Oh, so it has that kind of system where you can kind of guess stuff and see if it's correct.
Yeah. I guessed the plot point early on, and I'm like, yes, I'm actually right. This is great.
And it rewards you for that in the game?
No, not really. No.
Okay.
I wish it did.
Yeah.
You just feel good about yourself that you understood all the foreshadowing.
Oh, nice. So it's very good at kind of foreshadowing and bringing and tracking all the different reasoning behind why certain things happen. That's always good in these kind of plots, I suppose. And it kind of explores what's two-dimensional side-scrolling environments, and they the exploration kind of element. Does it have good exploration as you kind of?
It's pretty. That's what I was all distracted about. But it's not super adventure gamey. You run around, you talk to friends, you pull out items, you use items. So it's like that, but there's not super a lot of exploring, despite all the branching paths that you can do on the narratives.
Yeah, because with the branching paths, you have a flowchart apparently.
Yes.
Where you can jump between scenes and try different keywords from your thought cloud.
Yes.
Was this all sort of well implemented, I suppose? Did you have any trouble with that kind of
sometimes
gameplay?
It wasn't clear which one I was supposed to use, because I remember getting stuck at one. I'm like, well, what am I missing? And it took me a little bit to, proc it correctly. But as a whole, that was basically just one spot. As a whole, it's usually it's pretty easy to figure out what you're supposed to do to keep going.
Yeah. And oh wow, I'm noting that it says several reviewers faulted the RTS segments as the weakest part of the game.
It is it was so different from the adventure game part, and it's just okay, and it doesn't really explain it the best. I was playing on super casual difficulty, and sometimes I'm like, how would I have done this on hard? Because I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm just throwing sentry guns out there, attacking kaiju.
Yeah.
So definitely play it for the story. Don't play it for the battles.
Yeah, it seems quite a weird kind of disconnect, I guess, from the main kind of conceit.
Yeah, the story-wise, the battles do make sense. You're defending your city from futuristic invaders of kaiju. But it just doesn't mesh well with the adventure because it's a totally different segment in the game. Because you have your adventure segment, then you have something that keeps track of all the story details and stuff that you can look through to remind yourself of everything. And then the battle segment, which you can play totally at a different time if you don't want to, do it right away in an adventure game.
Yeah.
Even though sometimes the story gets locked, you have to do at least 3 battles before you can do any more story.
Wow, so I feel that's an interesting kind of concept for a game, the kind of mystery combined with adventure, almost like Sierra adventure quality combined with the RTS stuff. It's an interesting sort of mesh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that game. I actually want to try it out. I've been wanting to try it out for a little while, but now I understand it a little more and I know what to expect.
And the story is definitely worth it.
Ah, cool. Excellent. Yeah, Volrath, what game have you been playing lately, maybe?
I've been playing a game called Immortals: Fenyx Rising, and I can tell you straight off that one thing I don't like about it is the name. It's so awkward. But to be fair, it's not totally their fault. It was going to be called Gods and Monsters, which it's much more appropriate. But I guess they were threatened with a lawsuit by Monster Energy Drink of all things.
Oh wow!
So they had to change it, and that was the best they could do on short notice, I suppose. But the quickest way to describe this game is that it's Breath of the Wild, but Greek mythology. And if you play Breath of the Wild, the longer you play this, the similarities just keep piling up. It's funny at times, but I do enjoy it a lot. There's another word for this type of game that I've heard used recently that I like, just map games, which is just like this, and other stuff like Assassin's Creed games like that, where there's a big map and there's all this stuff marked that you can do. Usually you have to climb something high to see what you can do, and then you go do it. And sometimes, some people get overwhelmed by that, but I tend to really enjoy just kind of like, strolling around the countryside and solving a puzzle and whatever else is going on. And it's a very beautiful world, too. It's very colorful, kind of cartoony, and in a good way. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. I mean, the story's, fine. It's not, like, great. But it's funny. It's got a good sense of humor about itself and some fun gameplay stuff. And yeah, I'm sure there's probably a lot of hours I have yet to put into it because these map games tend to be pretty big. But yeah, I am enjoying that a great deal.
Sort of open world gameplay kind of stuff. And
yes.
Very, very open. I just noticed a quick tidbit about this game that seems really funny. The game was developed by Ubisoft Quebec, the team which created Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and the game director Scott Phillips added that the project originated from a software bug the team discovered during the development of Odyssey, which changed the humans on the player's crew into giant cyclopses, and decided that it would be a good idea to create a separate game that embraces the mythological side of Greece.
I don't blame them for not wanting to, move away from Greece, because Assassin's Creed Odyssey also is in Greece.
Yeah,
and that was more like, it was more realistic looking. Very beautiful. You could tell they actually went there and took a close look at the landscape and stuff. And this isn't, this is not based on like the real Greece necessarily. I'm sure it kind of looks like it, but it's not like in those Assassin's Creed games. They'll put like landmarks, famous buildings. It's tends to be very accurate, but this game is just sort of more to have fun with it.
Right. Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, not to divert from the original game, but I'd say about Assassin's Creed games, despite some, contrivances I might have with their gameplay, they've always set to be quite accurate in the atmosphere that they portray, and the architecture and all that kind of stuff seems to be really well researched. That's one reason I think why people keep going back to those games is the, authenticity of it all. Yeah, apparently due to the positive reception of Odyssey, Ubisoft's management agreed to greenlight this project because Odyssey worked so well, apparently. So, and I just find it so funny that the name change appeared to be, a result of that trademark dispute with Monster Energy, because apparently they said it believed it would cause confusion. So
yeah, you're gonna buy a video game about an energy drink, but like Gods and Monster energy drinks. Like. Yeah, that's where all you do is drink a Monster. That's it. That's the game. But I don't. You get that stuff a lot though. I guess there's some guy. I don't remember his name. I read about it a long time ago. Basically, he sues anything that uses the word edge. He thinks he's got like a copyright on the word edge.
Oh wow!
So when that game Mirror's Edge came out a long time ago, he sued them. And I'm sure there's, some other games that, uses one of those words that tends to come up a lot. So, I don't know, it's just kind of weird that people think that they can just, own a word. But,
yeah.
Just saying.
Exactly. And as for, say, I suppose it's got some, the action elements of, a quick sword that attacks really lightly but weakly, and then there's, a hammer which is, slow and strong, and there's bows and arrows, and there's stamina, and all this stuff. Is it how compelling is it? Is it as compelling as Zelda, or is it a bit? Are there times when it's
I
sort of
think if you were, if you're talking about the combat, if you were frustrated by the, the breaking swords in Breath of the Wild and kind of the overall difficulties, that game was on the challenging side, especially at the beginning. You'd enjoy this because there's really none of that. It's pretty simplified when it comes to the weapons. Like, you can upgrade your sword, but it will apply to whatever sword you might pick up. So you just you basically upgrade your character's like capacity with a sword, and that applies to whatever. And the axe. The axe is the heavy weapon, which I like a lot better. That's a lot of fun. And you have the arrows. I don't use those all that often. Except for puzzles. You need them for a lot of puzzles. But it is pretty compelling. It's just, you have to be one of those people like me who just likes to wander around some giant landscape and do stuff, because it's not, the story itself is probably not going to like hook you necessarily. Like, it doesn't have the, like, Breath of the Wild has this melancholy that I think is very compelling. I think that draws people in. But this game doesn't have that. It's silly. There's jokes. I mean, they sometimes speak, like the god of war Ares like calls himself badass. Like, it's that kind of humor.
yeah.
And that's fine. But like, I'm just in it for the wandering. I just dig that stuff.
Exploration and just exploring and experiencing a world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that game. Let's everybody go play Immortals Fenyx Rising if that's your thing. Go check it out. Yeah. So that's what we've been playing, maybe. And now we're going to go into our next section, topics we must discuss, because this is a podcast and it's serious. Hey, welcome. Here's the part of the podcast where we ask the serious questions. I ask, a couple serious questions about, well, not too serious. It's not like DAO or anything. It's just, things about origin and inspiration and stuff like that. Our guests are going to they can just answer in any order they'd like. And I'll just start by asking about the beginning of it all. How did you come about making games? And if it's RPG Maker, how did you discover the engine? Or if it's not, that's fine too. And what's your general story when it comes to game development?
So I started with RPG Maker 2000 in high school. I don't remember exactly how it came to my attention. Probably something to do with Artbane. He probably got it first and told me about it. And I really was pretty excited when I saw like what I could really do with this. Like, it was, I didn't realize this kind of thing existed. And, like the year 2000, that's like, there's a lot that was different back then. I mean, I had no expectation that anything I made would ever get sold or really ever get seen by more than like a handful of people. But I was just enjoyed the idea of just, doing a story, making my own story. And, because I'd written, just little stories, just pen and paper growing up, but to have control over the, the visuals and like the atmosphere, and it was just, and to not have to write descriptive language, because I kind of get impatient with that. But so that was really exciting, and I made my first game, which is technically a soulless game, although I didn't name the world for a long time, but it takes place in the same setting as Master of the Wind, and we incorporated elements of it for Stoic's backstory when you get to that part of Master of the Wind, because he lived through all of the previous games that I had made. That was part of the thing that got Artbane and I excited to do it, was that, we'll have somebody who remembers the old games. And it's also the first game that had the character Volrath, who I, use his name for all of my online alias needs. And very different Volrath than the one that's in Master of the Wind. This one was more of a straight-up villain, although a sympathetic one, whereas the Volrath in Master of the Wind is more of a tragic hero type. Yeah, so I did that, and I kind of just kept screwing around with other projects. I finished that first game. It wasn't very long, but I finished that, and I tooled around with some other ones that I never finished because, they were kind of just aimless and bit off more than I could chew, that sort of thing. and then I made a game, Clean Slate, when I was in college, and that is like the direct prequel to Master of the Wind in some ways. And that was the last one I made on 2000. Artbane and I decided that we'd work together for another game for XP, which had just come out. And we sort of came up with the bones of the idea, no pun intended. I just realized that. And, the rest is history. I guess probably talk about that later. But that was more or less how I got started. And, that's my story for now.
Because it kind of came from a writerly place, I suppose, because you were writing first.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily about games to begin with, but then it became more about games later?
Well, yeah, because my early stuff was very focused on story and characters. Like I had, dungeons and stuff, but it was pretty much just like walk around, pull a switch, go through the door. Yeah. But right from the start, Artbane's games, you could tell, okay, this guy has a knack for puzzles. Even his early stuff. He'd probably be embarrassed about it now because he tends to have pretty high standards for himself. But at the time, I'd play those, or my brother would play those, and we were like, "Holy crap, dude! How'd you even do this?" And he'd show us the code, and it'd be like, "Whoa!" And it was all events because there was no scripting in 2000, which is something he kind of continued in XP. Which most of the puzzles in Master of the Wind are actually in events. There's not a ton of scripting in that game, at least in regard to puzzles. When it came to the point that we thought about working together, we kind of thought, okay, well, I've been focusing on the story and characters, and he's very good at, dungeons and puzzles and stuff, and we ought to have a pretty well-rounded game if we work together, and that's, that was how it started.
I think that might have some sort of parallel with Ronove as well, but we'll get onto that very soon. Yeah, it's interesting how you come to it from that writerly background and then find someone who can complement your skills and work with them to sort of provide something that provides the best of both worlds, I guess.
Yeah, and although we still haven't figured out the art question, we brought in Anchor for Master of the Wind, who who did, but he didn't even come on until we were a couple arcs in. So he helped us out with some of the art, but he couldn't take care of everything. And of course, Renove's done art for us a couple times, and we're thankful for that, because otherwise, that's where we always get stuck. Because neither of us are really great at that. So it's good to have friends, I guess. Yeah,
you can sort of make do with it, but then you sometimes you need the help of the professionals in that particular area to make it shine, I guess. So people like Ronove can really add that extra sheen to your game.
Right.
I do my best.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for sharing that story. Your story in that regard. I'm going to move on to Ronove as well, just to talk about Ronove. How did you come about making games? What's your story? And how did that eventuate?
So, do you remember the RPG Maker that was on the PS1? That's where I got started.
Yeah.
Because we found it in a shop once, and I was like, hey, can I have this? It's like, sure, why not? And then, doing whatever. I don't even remember what I was making in there. I didn't get very far. And then I looked on the computer, and it was like, oh, there's RPG Maker 2000, 2003. Well, I'll just get this. And that's pretty much where it started. Then XP came out, I think, shortly after I found it. I don't really remember. And then, my story is not as long as Volrath.
Oh, sorry.
Well, because you both end up using XP as well, which is and you come from the similar, era of game making.
Yes.
Sort of Star Stealing Prince and Master of the Wind being released in full nearby kind of thing, nearby to each other's.
Star Stealing Prince was near the end of Master of the Wind, because I did have the Memento Vivere that everybody loves asking me about, I think, while he was working on Master of the Wind. I don't remember.
Yeah, it did. They were concurrent, I guess.
Okay. So if I gave up on mine and he didn't.
Yeah, and as for the original, I've actually interviewed a lot of people, or had podcasts with a lot of people who started on the PS1 version of RPG Maker, or RPG Maker 95 even. They very early versions of RPG Maker. I think it was Unity as well who had created a full-length, 20-hour thing in the PlayStation version.
That's impressive, because it's hard to imagine doing that with a controller. I've never played the PlayStation one, so I don't know.
Oh,
But
it took
seems
forever to do anything with the typing.
It was either Unity or someone else because they noted how difficult it was to create all the custom graphics using the inbuilt pixel editor. It might not have been Unity actually. It might have been it might have been someone else who was talking about that. But yeah, they created a full game like that. It could have even been. I'm not going to name any names. Actually,
well, whoever it was,
about that, but,
I'm quite impressed.
Yeah. And as for yourself, Ronove, you originally, were you kind of like Volrath, where you approached it from a writerly standpoint? You were doing like, because you have your own experience with writing various extended pieces of fiction and things like that?
Yes, I'm much more of a writer than I am anything else. So yes, every time I always, especially back then, I approached it more as a writer. So I'd have these like plans for these huge ass cutscenes, and then it's like, wait a minute, I'm making a game. What am I supposed to do with this? Because I know before I gave up on Memento Vivere, I did have a lot of the cutscenes done. I just could not bring myself to do any of the gameplay because I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I got the writing done. That's what I wanted.
Yeah. And that's fair enough. That happens to various projects. So it's sometimes people get very far in a project and they just kind of realize, oh, this isn't working how I wanted it to, and I'm not having fun doing this. So I might as well, it can hurt, but it can be just like, okay, I'm going to create something else now, sort of thing. I might come back to this later, or maybe not.
Spoilers, you never do.
Yeah, and it's completely fine too.
Yeah.
As for that part, how did you, I suppose, tackle the how did you were also part of a duo with Died Rupo as well. How did you kind of get into that partnership?
I don't remember. I think he liked Memento Vivere, so he started talking to me, and then we started talking, and I'm making a game. I'm like, well, I can't do any of this scripting bullshit. And he was like, well, I can. And so that's pretty much where that went. And then I don't actually remember when I asked him to help with Star Stealing Prince at all. It was just there.
Did you ask Died Rupo to was it sort of like halfway through Star Stealing Prince, or was
I think it was, because when I look back at the scripting, that's not a lot of his stuff. He was just basically making it work together, I think.
Oh, okay.
I could also be wrong. It's been 10 years. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely know he wasn't there at the beginning, because at the beginning it was just me and like RTP graphics.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I'm going to do this in my own art and my own, stuff. And then I think that's when he started showing up to help.
Excellent. Well, that's good to hear. And then I guess I'll transition on to the idea of inspiration. Would you have any favorite kinds of games or other media that sort of inspires you to create, like your particular games? Is there some, say, obvious source of inspiration?
Well, I'm a huge movie buff guy, so that I'm sure that plays a lot of it.
Yeah, he is.
I do my my top 10 list. Actually, that'll be done this weekend. It's around that time. But I do a top 10 list of movies every year. I watch stuff constantly. So there's a lot of movie stuff that finds its way into just like the idea of, a lot of my style of dialogue, I think, is done with that in mind. Not necessarily like writing for a game, whatever that might mean. It's just kind of like, this is how I'd write a movie. So I'm just putting it in like that. And obviously in Master of the Wind, there's the comic book thing. I read comics growing up, still do occasionally, not as much. But so that was basically serialized entertainment was a big one for Master of the Wind, whether it's, a television show or a comic book. That was kind of how I approached it. It was there, which, leads to, it gives a certain amount of detail that I think people enjoy, although it can compromise the pacing at times.
And Master of the Wind was also released before the big MCU sort of stuff came through.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that Master of the Wind is older than. It's kind of disorienting. But that was a little while before that. And you could see with those movies, I mean, the whole serialized thing, people just love that. I mean, just like, and there's risks to that too, because I think one issue with the Marvel movies is that like they spend a lot of time just getting you excited for the next movie rather than, wanting you to, take a lot away from the movie you just watched. So I think sometimes that gets a little out of control. But I mean, on the whole, they've sort of the aspects of it that people like, the characterization and the connections. I mean, they've done that very well.
And I suppose, Master of the Wind has his own sort of Avengers kind of style, kind of collection of heroes and villains. I don't know. But it's mostly the dynamic duo that has their due.
Yeah, I mean, it eventually becomes a 4-person party, but it's definitely the Shroud and Stoic who carry it.
And is there any particular films, any genres that kind of influenced you?
All right, so let's talk about it like a game. If movie buff is my class, then I specialize in horror and animation. I put a lot of points into those two.
Oh.
And so I know a lot about horror, although obviously you won't see much of that in Master of the Wind. And animation is another thing I've always enjoyed, just how different it is depending on what part of the world it's from. I find that really fascinating. And so I think that you might see some of that in Master of the Wind, just the anime filmmaker Satoshi Kon, rest in peace, was a big influence on me. And you might not necessarily pick that up from the narrative of Master of the Wind because it's fairly straightforward compared to his stuff, but just something about the way he got to he made things emotional even when they were kind of confusing, which is not easy to do. Not a lot of people can do that. It's easy to make something that's like weird, but like to actually have an emotional undercurrent as well, in spite of it. I mean, that's hard to do, and he did it. So that's something I find very inspiring.
I suppose it was something that was in the back of your mind as you were creating the kind of ideas. Okay, you can have emotion kind of running under this mix of moods and humor and kind of drama in there as well.
Yeah.
So you
Labyrinth
being
and
unafraid
Dreams,
to sort of combine them.
Yeah, Labyrinth and Dreams is probably the closest I got to a Satoshi Kon story, and even that's not quite the same, but it's probably the closest I've gotten anyway.
Dreams. Yeah. How about yourself, Ronove? Do you have favorite kinds of games or other media, and do they inspire you to create in a certain way?
Not really. I like RPGs and anything with like a story that makes me actually care about the characters and whatnot. For other media, I really like books because I want to be a writer, so I read a lot. I can't say if there's any one thing that inspires me because I just don't think about it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And as for the novelistic nature of your games, are there any particular writers or genres that you sort of go to and are inspired by?
I like fantasy a lot. So, but as for particular authors, not really. It varies and changes throughout the years. Right now, I really like the Gideon the Ninth series because it's weird. It's sci-fi, but it's also fantasy, and it's also really, really weird.
Oh, okay. Gideon the Ninth.
Yes.
Ah, okay. Very interesting. Oh, by a New Zealand writer. Yes, I will claim that. Yeah. Yeah. So, that kind of novelistic aspect and that sort of just reading and kind of letting it permeate into your works, I suppose, and being that. And as for your specific method, I kind of will transition into that because I think it's quite important. Do you do the writing first, or do you do say graphics, or do you kind of come upon the idea and do them in a randomized sort of order?
I do the randomized order, but I always start with I get an idea of who the main character is and the basic gist of the story. So with Star Stealing Prince, it's I've got a snowy kingdom and I've got a prince for it. Okay. So I draw it and then brainstorm, and then everything just kind of goes from there.
Excellent. Volrath, do you have a specific method?
No, not so much. I guess, writing's always pretty central. I kind of come up with a basic idea, usually have the ending in mind, but I don't like to plan out everything ahead of time, dialogue-wise or plot-wise, because then you don't get to have those moments where you sort of surprise yourself.
Yeah.
And some of the, things that turned out really well in the games I've written were like that, where it was just working on it oh, that'd be interesting if this happened. And that's what happens. So I like to leave a lot of sort of unknowns when I'm starting, because then you get to have that. And it's cool near the end, like, because Master of the Wind was so long that by the end of it, it really felt like those characters could write themselves, where you just knew exactly what they would say in a particular situation, and that's fun to do. And I think had I tried to plan out all of their dialogue or all of their actions like from the start, it would have actually ultimately been like less convincing, because I wouldn't have had the sort of organic realizations about them, while working. So I pretty much just kind of open the RPG Maker up and think about what I got to do, and maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. It's really not. I'm not very organized with that stuff, so don't take me as a role model, because probably won't get a lot done.
I need a stricter framework to work with, because I can't do what he does and just let it go.
Yeah.
Because with the visual novel that I'm working on, the whole script is obviously done, and it's if I didn't have it done, I wouldn't actually work on it, because I wouldn't know where I wanted to exactly go. But I still have added a lot of stuff that I didn't originally write down. I just need it all in order before I can even start working on stuff, which is also how I work on novels. I have to have a very strict outline, and if I come up with more stuff as I go, I do. If I don't, I don't.
So would you write outside the editor and then import it, or would you just directly write into the editor? Is it different for RenP and is it different for RPG Maker? Or
Well, both of them don't have a spell check.
Oh, right.
So it's dangerous to write in the editor.
That's a good reason.
But yeah, I usually write in the editor and then go, okay, is this all spelled right? And it's pretty much the same in RPG Maker. The only thing I really make up in terms of with Star Stealing Prince, for example, is NPC chat or flavor text.
Yeah, that can be.
Because I know even though I said I need a strict outline with Star Stealing Prince, I didn't actually have one. I don't know how I managed it, or if I actually did have one and I just don't remember it.
Yeah, I suppose as for working with teams, because you're both part of duo sort of development, just 2-person development teams generally. Maybe more towards maybe I'm thinking Homework Salesman as well. That might have been more of a Died Rupo being involved from the start. But yeah, how would you say working with your team has been? Did you say, I'll do the graphics, you do the eventing, I'll do the story, you do the... And then how did you work on the same project file, I suppose?
Well, yeah, this was interesting. Here's another installment of the Master of the Wind is Old series. In that when we first started, there was no Dropbox. There was nothing like that. So we couldn't work in the same project file unless he moved into my house. And so we basically would, sort of come up with a basic outline for the story, and then we'd be like, all right, well, I'll do this scene, this is them talking in the village, I can do this. And then you'll do the dungeon where they go into the ice cave or whatever. And we would sort of have our maps that we would work on, and then at the end of every arc, at least before, I think Dropbox came out and we were doing arc 4 maybe. We started using that, and boy, that was a lot easier.
It was.
Yeah.
But I would put my copy of the game on a USB, and then I would go to his place, and he would pull it off, and he would spend the next 2 days just copying things over, making sure they didn't conflict. He called it the fusion, and it was, and it was always, I'm sure it was painstaking for him, because it's just, sometimes we had different versions of the same map if it was a particularly important map. And so you sort of had to copy the events over and make sure there's no, didn't conflict, and make sure all the teleports were working. And I think it was pretty rough. But in Dropbox, it becomes just all right, well, I'm in the game now, so, stay, don't go in, don't do anything.
Yeah.
So it eventually got a lot easier. But at the beginning, we had to use what we had,
And how about yourself, Ronove? How did you work in the, I suppose, team dynamic of what you were building?
Oh, we're spoiled with Dropbox. That's one thing. So this more comes into play with Homework Salesman. And so basically it was, his Died Rupo's story. It wasn't really mine. What he did was write the basic gist of what he wanted, and then I would just spruce it up if I felt it was lacking. And then I know he's not good at mapping and he's not good at art. So I says, yeah, I can do mapping and art. And then he, did all like the game systems, like the AP system and the basic gist of the dungeons where I would just like pretty them up. He would just do the basics. So we were able to do it like that.
So
The Star Stealing Prince, though, everything was me, basically, except for the programming and scripting.
Yes, I suppose Star Stealing Prince will be much more your vision, your side of the visions kind of things, and then Homework Salesman would be more like Diad Rupo's kind of vision and where they want us to go.
And like even with the other projects that I've eventually like let go, like I was pretty much like, yes, this is what I'm going to do, and I had everything that I was doing, and he would just focus on the scripting.
Yeah. I did have one thing I wanted to say about the team collaboration part with regard to the files. I remember I was in a team game jam where we would have, I suppose, the Dropbox kind of thing, but then I wrote out a document where I said, okay, you can, if you want to edit a certain map, then put it down in the document and lock the map, so to speak, and then change the map infos to, reflect that change, and then you can work on that map, and then everyone, you change this one document to be like, okay, I'm working on this map 007, I'm working on map 008, and all this thing. We tried to integrate it together. It was quite a difficult process, though, because there was like maybe about a 10-step process. Okay, now you have to copy the graphics in, now you have to copy the audio in. I'm sure it's what Artbane or Stoic had to do in their own time. Maybe it was better to be done by one person, but I was just like, you have to do it, and you follow this document, and that's how you integrate it. So yeah, there's different ways, but I'm sure they've got way better ways of integrating teams now. Maybe we'll see. I haven't done my research.
I think Dropbox is still the way to go.
Yeah, Dropbox is good. Or GitHub.
Except when it's like, no, you can't do this. This file's in use. It's like, no, it's not. Let me do something with this file.
That too. Yeah, there was a lot of things where it's like someone's edited an old version of a map, and it's like, wait, have you updated recently? They were using like a version of the map that was 10 days old or something,
that did come up once in a while.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, you always have to sync. Sync is the big word. And it's like, it's not syncing. Oh, no. What's happening now? Yeah. So that is the end of our section. We've been serious. And now we're going to go on to our next section, which is the question box. Welcome to the question box. This is the segment, RPG Maker Cola exclusive, where RPG Maker community users ask questions related to game development and design and other things, I don't have any control over you, that we probably don't know the answers to, but we'll try. Our first question comes from Frogge from Twitter. What is the inspiration for your games, and how do you react to the newfound fame that arose after you became popular? We sort of answered that first half a little bit, but if you want to elaborate on it, that's fine. Yeah.
I don't actually remember at all what Star Stealing Prince was inspired by, because it's too old and I don't remember. But I do remember it started as this little illustrated novel that was meant to join other little illustrated novels and journals and go on the road together. I don't remember what it was called anymore, and I don't remember any more details. But I didn't finish it, because, that seems to be my brand. But it was called The Snow Prince, and since I didn't finish it there, I was like, hey, I can make this into an RPG, and that's what happened. Hey, video games.
And about that second part, did you ever feel like you had this kind of newfound fame, like, oh, the Star-Stealing Prince, you're popular now?
So, I reacted the same way I reacted when Memento Vivere got popular. I was very poorly. I'm just not really good. I get nervous with a lot of attention. Yeah. And especially since a lot of, the RPG Maker scene, if you get too popular, people hate you for no reason. And that happens.
That's
and
true.
That happened to me. So I just okay, I don't want to do this anymore. Which is why I haven't really talked about anything in, public about game making and crap for a long time.
Yeah, it happens.
Because you just get frustrated with it.
Yeah. It happens. It's very, people tend to feel entitled to certain things, and also there's that barrier of the screen and the internet where people feel free to say what they wouldn't say in real life because they don't have any consequences to their actions. And there's also the idea that if you haven't created stuff, then there's also, sometimes a lack of sympathy towards the creator, or even sometimes if you have created, there's, sometimes people can be very blunt when they come to criticism. And that kind of makes me sad that people would, it makes me sad that people would be discouraged from making games because of the community and the climate. But also, I know that they're valid in being and making their own decisions in that regard. But yeah, it can be a two-sided thing, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, like they're entitled to their opinion, but sometimes it just sucks because it's like, wow, I like this community and now I don't because you're all jerks to me.
Yeah, that can really be a thing. It can be quite affecting. Yeah, and how about yourself, Volrath? Do you have inspiration for your games and your famous reputation?
Well, I think we covered Master of the Wind's origins pretty well, just the comic books, particularly Spider-Man, serialized storytelling, that sort of thing. Now, I think with the fame part of it, if you can call it that, I mean, it's kind of a fleeting sort of fame, if that's what you'd call it. I was mostly okay with the attention that the game got. And I tend to just sort of, I'm not the kind of guy who sort of tells people what they want to hear. I just say what I think, and I think, and I kind of knew like, okay, well, that's not going to change. Although I did notice that I got less flack for that the more Master of the Wind was known. It sort of gave me more license to shoot my mouth off if I felt like it. But but that, I don't know. I get a little carried away with that. I was in my 20s. It's a very 20s thing to do. And so I think I probably mellowed out somewhat, in my old age. But but in terms of like the community reaction, it can feel very polarizing because on the one hand, Master of the Wind got a lot of awards and people wrote nice reviews and really they treated us pretty well, like on the whole. But you do get a certain contingent that just kind of, puts your name on a dartboard when you get too popular. And I think there were some people who kind of approached their reviewing not from like, okay, let's play this, game that people are talking about and they'll see what I think of it. It was more like, this game is more popular than I feel is acceptable, so I'm gonna, take it down a peg. And we got a few of those. And sometimes I don't know, I might have invited some of it with the game's very pointed in its commentary on business and exploitation and extremism, and so you invite a little bit of that when you go into that sort of touchy territory. But I think on the whole, I really can't say that we weren't treated well because we were. And I remember I had a conversation with Ronove actually a couple of years ago. We were talking about, I think just here on Discord, we were talking about like how we've both been working on these projects and we haven't really finished anything big since our the games that we're known for. But at the same time, I don't really feel like I need to prove anything.
Yeah.
And I hope that doesn't sound arrogant because I don't mean it that way.
Not at all.
I just mean that like I finished a game. Like I don't have to, a big one. And I don't necessarily need to like prove that I can do that. So if I end up tinkering with this, same little project I've been doing for the rest of my life, that's okay.
Yeah.
You still did better than most of everybody. You finished a game.
Yeah.
So, but it was quite a ride. I mean, that day that Arc 4 was the one that got a lot of B-cells. Well, number 7 too, but 4 was the one where it was like we pulled up the results and we were like, holy shit! Like we won all these ones, including Game of the Year, and I was like, that was when I knew like, okay, something is happening with this game. Like people are into it.
It's like the Lord of the
If it
Rings
doesn't-
of the Oscars, kind of just the sweeping the.
Yeah, well,
Return
I
of the
think people said that when Arc 7 won so many, they were like, "Oh, well, this is like the Return of the King thing. You're getting congratulated just because you finished it." And yeah, maybe that's maybe that's the case. But yeah, that was something. Although I really found it meaningful with that Ronove and Star Stealing Prince won the next year because we've been friends a long time, and I remember I asked her to draw this thing because I would have drawn it myself, but I don't have any talent, so I asked her to draw like Shroud handing Prince Snow his award, like they do at the Oscars, where the previous winner hands the statue to the new winner, and that was like, I don't know, I just love that idea.
That's so nice.
So that was a special thing.
It's still a cute picture.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can actually kind of attest to, and I hope this is sort of heartening to hear, the sort of Wild West nature to early RPG Maker community, RPGmaker.net, Gaming W, all that sort of, where people shot from the hip, so to speak, and it was kind of brutal and a bit more critical in a kind of cynical way, and there was a bit more, people felt more in that inclination. They're like, oh, I don't know, I'm not trying to like stereotype, but it's like, I'm an edgy teenager and I want to sort of let out my frustrations, but I think nowadays there's a bit more of a maturity level and a kind of generally constructive vibe, and they sort of discourage any sort of blatant, criticism with no constructive benefit, and it's working out pretty well, I think, because
I think the moderation is better, and that makes a big difference. Because I remember Gaming World. That Gaming World was a fucking pit, dude. Yeah, that was. You put something there, it was just almost nothing but just like, you suck, this game's garbage. Yeah. That was like all you would get. And RPGmaker.net's had different eras. But for the most part, I've gotten along pretty well with people there. And there was the now defunct rmxp.org, and boy, do I have stories about that one. Yeah. And I don't know if I should I don't know how much I should get into, but there's a lot of stories. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Bad stories.
Yeah. Different communities, of course, had the different vibes to them. I think I'll give credit to Liberty here for being the current CEO and admin of RPGmaker.net. She's done a fantastic job in creating a friendly community, and she shuts down toxicity. She has no problem doing that. She'll just say, nope, not having that here. And I think that's one of her greatest qualities. She just has a no-nonsense business to toxic negativity and just gross kind of thinking. So I really shouts out to Liberty on that front.
Yes, thank you, Liberty.
Yeah. As for next question, it's sort of related, but it's a bit different. It's from Egypt or esby from the RPG Maker Cola Discord, who I know is, decent Ronove fan, actually. They say, I know Ronove has still been working on things in the background, Dragon Trials, Maladaptive Daydream, etc. But my question for them would be, and I would also extend this to Volrath, what challenges have you encountered in returning to game dev or game development after having took time away from it? I'll kind of add, it's like maybe it was technical things, or maybe it was, just getting back into game development. What kind of challenges have you encountered?
So as for me, it's also assuming I do take time away from it. I just stopped talking about it.
Yeah.
But for challenges coming back, is just not knowing where exactly to start. Like, did he mention Maladaptive Daydream?
Yes, yeah.
Because that one's one I've actually been working on since before Star Stealing Prince, and it's gone through many iterations, and it's still nowhere close to being anything to talk about. But that's one of the ones I always come back to, and I'm always like, okay, where did I leave off? I don't know. Let's just start remaking everything. But I think that's generally the only problems with returning, because you're like, okay, I have to start somewhere. Where do I start? Do I check to see if there's any new plugins that can help what I'm doing? Oh no, all the plugins that I was using is now locked behind a paywall.
Oh, yeah,
so sometimes it's frustrating, but it's really just knowing where to start and what resources you now have available that you didn't have before.
Yeah. Right. Well, in my case, we had a little bit of trouble with, I guess, just expectations. I think there's a decent portion of our fans who just prefer we make Master of the Wind forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always.
And, and that's sweet and everything. But we were definitely in the mood to try something different after working on that game for 6 years. And Ex Noir was challenging to finish. I mean, it's still like, I don't know, I kind of hesitate to call it finished, honestly, because there's still like all this stuff in it that like we never really, figured out what it was for. It's, it was definitely an experimental sort of game. And I think it turned out okay, but like it was, it was hard with the expectations. I mean, I think it was different than what people expected from us. And sometimes we have trouble adhering to our own expectations that, the expectations that we set. Like, one thing I heard about Master of the Wind a lot was that, yeah, this isn't really about superheroes. This is more of a standard fantasy epic, and they just wear masks. And, he's not wrong.
Isn't that what all superhero things are, though?
Well,
if you really get down to it.
I think when people say that, what they mean is that they would have liked, some more like traditional superhero stuff, like, and it was very much, it was, kind of a traditional fantasy epic with that element. And that was kind of our fault for like, we played up the superhero thing so much because it was, it was sort of a unique angle that our game had. But Ex Noir was a similar thing. It's got noir in the name, but it's not really, it's sort of about some of the tropes in a dark detective story, because like it's not really it's not this hard boiled thing, it's not in black and white. We considered that but didn't do it. It's not in black and white. It's not like super, hard boiled.
Texturally, but, yeah.
And I kind of realized towards the end that what I was doing was sort of playing with the idea of the detective as like this tough guy who you never see upset, and he's just like, got his eye on the prize the whole time. And, my character in that game my lead character was just like this guy who was kind of a mess. He was drunk and sad and miserable. And, but I don't know, I just found that more interesting.
Yeah.
Than just having the detective who's like never wrong. And like, it's just, so I guess it was sort of playing with that idea. It was sort of a deconstructive sort of thing, but I didn't realize that till we were getting near the end. So I think, we had all sorts of people playing Ex Noir and being like, oh, this isn't really, I thought this was going to be noir. This is just like a detective story with this weird lead character.
Yeah.
And also we heard a lot that like, because that one we made in VX Ace, so that VX Ace's graphics were too cute for a story that had, a fair amount of dark themes in it, which
you did your best.
Well, yeah, which may be true, but I really can't do much about that. Like, honestly.
Yeah, like I said, you did your best.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that. I understand that point. It's not a bad point. It's just, what am I supposed to do about it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not just going to not make something because of that.
And it was quite experimental as well. Ex Noir in general, it was like you had some shooting mechanics and things like that, and you were trying different things within the RPG Maker engine, so it was sort of experimental in that regard. Like, it's not really the usual like route to go down where you're a detective trying to figure out a story. That's not the usual kind of route, so you can be forgiven for experimenting and going, oh, this works, and this didn't quite work, because you're breaking new ground.
Yeah, we were at a crossroads at one point with that game where we had to decide, like, do we want to have combat in it, or is it going to be totally an adventure sort of game where you're walking around getting clues, solving puzzles, and whatever. Yeah. And, Art Bain eventually said, no, I'd like to try combat. So we did. It might have been a little smoother without it, but it was, interesting to work with for sure.
Yeah.
And you don't learn anything without taking challenges, so...
I'm
sure, you guys learned a lot by like, yeah, we're going to add this in here. Well, that didn't work out well, but oh well, we learned stuff.
Yeah.
There's always a sort of experimental edge to it as well. Even Labyrinthine Dreams was like a sort of puzzle exploration kind of vibe to it, and it was not really usual in some of its aspects. So, I think it's quite important to push that envelope a bit in the RPG Maker engine.
Yeah, and for that one, that was very much Artbane really wanted to do a game where the gameplay was a metaphor for the story, because that was something we hadn't done, and a lot of games that he really likes did that. And so we did all the puzzles first for that one, and then I wrote the basic story based on what those puzzles kind of communicated to me. And so that was, it's a lot different. I mean, that game's a lot different than anything else I've written. But it was good to do. I know he always wanted to do that, and it was interesting for me too to work with a project like that.
Yeah. DungeonDevDude from the RPG Maker Cola Discord asks, what is the favorite part of both of your respective games? This is a nice question.
So, my favorite part of Star Stealing Prince was the Star Stealing part. I just liked how, yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's a good scene.
I liked how they came together, like, with the story, like, shit's going down, there's a boss, there's a puzzle that everybody hated, and then, it ends with, spoiler, Snow stealing the stars out of the sky. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I actually still really like that. Whenever I try replaying it, that one's always a cutscene. I'm like, yeah, this still looks nice, even though my art's old.
No, that was well executed with just the way the pictures worked of him grabbing the star like that. It was well done. Definitely memorable. For Master of the Wind, man, I don't know. Arc 5 is like kind of my baby. That was the really personal one. But that one is also a little I don't know how to say. It's a bit more polarizing in the fan base.
Yeah.
Because it's heavy on the backstory. And the way I did those cutscenes initially, and people might not know this because the final game we kind of changed that around a bit, but initially there were flashbacks in that arc that are like 45 minutes.
Wow.
and you're not playing. You're watching this flashback. And I don't know, I must have been like really like audacious after all those missiles for Arc 4 to think that I could get away with something like that. But so in the final version we put out, those scenes are broken up a bit more. Like all the same stuff is in there. It's just there's more gameplay between it. But that was really personal stuff to me. That was like, and it was going back to some themes that I had done in my very first game, the old game in RPG Maker 2000, and just kind of revisiting, those feelings and those themes, and just kind of updating it with, how I felt about things now, or then, I guess, 2008, I think, or 9. And so that one's got a special place. I mean, it's pretty emotional still. If I watch it, it is emotional. Like there's some scenes that'll still get me like worked up because I kind of know what went into them. Yeah. So that probably is my favorite bit.
It's got a personal kind of personal touch to it and significance, I suppose, as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, and we've probably got more questions than we can afford to answer, so I'd just like to say thank you to Orochi from RPGmaker.net and Nam Etag, nice name, from the RPG Maker Portal Discord. Thank you for asking questions. Unfortunately, we don't have time enough to answer everything, so we won't get into those questions, but they were good questions. Thank you so much. I'm going to combine two questions into one, and this is from... The first question is from Merlin Dees from the Freebird Games Discord, and it's to Volrath. Have you thought of a Master of the Wind remake? And if so, what major changes would you make, if any? And the second question is from Raxus from the RPG Maker Cola Discord for Ronove. It's kind of similar. Do you have any plans to return to Memento Vivere? If so, when? And if not, why did you choose to step away from the project? So I guess it's just old projects. Remake, rejoin into it? Would you? And why or why not?
I'll let Volrath answer first.
Okay. So I get asked about the remake a lot. And, Arpe and I we do talk about it sometimes, but really that's about all it is talk. Just about what we would like to do. And I can tell you some of the stuff we'd like to do, but I don't want, hopefully people don't get too excited because I don't really see it happening. But basically from my end, the story would, most of the same stuff in the story would happen. It just happened maybe at a different time. I think I would organize a lot of it differently, particularly in the earlier parts, just have things happen in a different order. That makes more sense. better for pacing and such like that. I know that I think at one point Artbane told me he imagined like an isometric battle system, something like Mario RPG. Because we had the straightforward front view battles for Master of the Wind. But the problem with that is, it's a fun idea, but I don't know if people really understand like what that would take.
Yeah.
And
especially since it's a long game.
Yeah, right.
Like for an RPG Maker game too.
Yeah, and I'll explain it this way. Labyrinth in Dreams is about an hour long. And that hour, to get it up to a standard that we felt was, appropriate for a commercial game, cost a few $1,000s, which we raised on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And now, but problem is, when a game is that short, you can't really get away with selling it for a lot. You can't really ask people to pay a whole lot when it's only an hour long. Mm. So I think we sold a decent amount of copies of that. I know a lot of people got it.
Oh. But
with every sale, you're splitting some of it with Steam.
Yeah.
And in our case, we're splitting some of it with Decay. So it really doesn't amount to like a ton of money in the end. Mm. So if Labyrinth in Dreams costs a few $1,000s and it's an hour long, you start to understand what it would take for a game like Master of the Wind.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that we do not have those kind of resources at our disposal.
Yeah.
And there'd be no reason to remake it just like, the way we did before with like mostly RPTP stuff. And because, then what's the point? If you're going to remake it, it should be like a major update. Mm-hmm. So now if some wealthy investor came out of the woodwork and said, here's $150,000, I want you to remake Master of the Wind, I'd be like, all right, let's do this. But I don't see that happening. So
well, lucky for you, imagine. I have $150,000 in my pocket, and I'd say minus a few thousand.
Yeah, that's a ballpark figure. I don't know exactly what it would cost. It'd be a lot, though. So yeah, we just don't have the resources. Is the bottom line. It's an idea that would be fun, and it'd be interesting, but stuff costs money.
Yeah, multi-million-dollar users and listeners. Go ahead and hit Volrath up in the DMs and show him, give him a couple ballpark figures, but he will only accept 150,000 or above. So just make sure you realize that. Yeah. And Rexus also asked Ronove, how about Memento Vivere? This is a common, this is a common topic.
It's very common. Like it shows up like everywhere I go. It's like, oh yeah, there's that question again.
Yeah.
Well, if somebody wanted to also throw me money, I would actually consider it. But for right now, it's no. Because I have actually revisited the story, because I did write it as a novel. So it's done. I haven't figured out if I want to publish it on the web yet, but I'm sure a lot of people who are asking for the game again won't read it. So
yeah.
And for why I chose to step away from the project, because the community was really toxic. I had somebody steal the battle system and try to parade it as theirs, even though it was made for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right? And so people were just terrible people back then. So I just said, nope, I'm just not going to. It doesn't have a lot of good memories. But like I said, I do have it as a novel now. So one day I might get off my butt and make it into a web novel. I just haven't decided how I wanted to go about it yet.
Oh. Yeah, that sounds awful. I didn't know that was what actually happened, and it sounds... Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't want to return to something that has that kind of connotation to it. But also... Yeah.
Although, despite that, it is impressive, I just want to say, to have made a game so long ago that made such an impression that you're still getting asked about it. I mean, that's... Not everybody does that, for sure.
Yeah, and another reason I wouldn't want to return to it is because I was using a lot of tiles by Yuppie, and he passed away a few years ago. Was it a year ago?
Oh. I think it was 2019, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like I wouldn't want to return to it because then he wouldn't be there to help me out.
All right.
Even though I don't really need his help anymore, but I would just feel weird not having him be a part of it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big thing. Yeah, Memento Vivere. Yeah, it's the topic on everyone's lips. They always bring it up.
Jeez.
Jeez. Well, hopefully this is the definitive answer to sort of,
Hopefully.
assuage everyone's. It'll probably keep coming now and then. We just need to blacklist it on Twitter or something. Block the words.
And, like, people have the game. I know they do. So if they ever wanted to cough it up, they can. The only copy I have, you can't play it because it's broken.
Oh, right.
So it's like, I'm not going to say, no, you can't show it off. You can't post it in these lost RPG Maker games. But it's like, if people want to play it, they'll play it. And then they'll be like, well, it's not very good. What the crap? But it's nostalgia that keeps people around.
Yeah, maybe it's better kept in people's memories. No?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
The mythical game. Yeah. Those were those games, and we have one more question from Raxus from the RPG Maker Cola Discord asking what themes you like to express in your works, and it's just in any order. Just feel free to contribute. If you don't have an answer, just no need. But
Well, I mean, it's I go into something with only like kind of a vague idea of what it's about thematically. It's not like I'm writing every scene with the intention of, okay, well, we're going to talk about this issue here and talk about this issue later. It's more vague and it kind of goes where it goes. But I have noticed, if I look back on the stuff I've written, there is a common idea of just like kind of alienation, feeling frustrated with like the way things work in the world, knowing it's wrong, but you feel helpless, you can't do much. And kind of like how people react to that. Whereas, Shroud reacts, he tries to fix everything, which with varying success. And for Eddie, the character in Exmoor, he gets drunk and gives up more or less. And Beth in Labyrinth and Dreams, she sort of tries to find her own happiness how she can, while accepting that some things just are what they are. And I guess that's something that I have struggled with in my life, just seeing things. And, I could get into my life story. I'm not going to do that, but I probably have reasons for thinking about that as much as I do. But so that tends to be kind of a standby. It's just that feeling of like helplessness, alienation. What do you do?
Yeah, very, very prominent in your works, and it's interesting things to explore and to kind of make people feel less alone about. I think if you express them and if you kind of explore those ideas, there's probably plenty of people who would just go, "Oh, that's me." Like I can feel that.
I have gotten that a few times. In fact, sometimes a certain thing will happen in the news. Some bad thing will happen in the news, and people will write to me and be like, "I feel like Stoic in the cave." Which, if you don't get the reference, it's there's a scene in Arc 5 where Stoic's gotten pretty old. He's and the Thorgallian Empire, which is the sort of genocidal knighthood that was defeated at the end of Clean Slate, but is sort of still has adherents in Master of the Wind, and they cause trouble. In Stoic's flashback, when they've just started, and he becomes aware of them. After having fought for most of his life to get rid of a different knighthood, which wasn't quite as bad, but still bad, to see he just gives up and he goes into a cave and he has a little fit and, knocks rubble in front of the entrance. He seals himself in the cave for 400 years until somebody finds him. And, and some people kind of, I don't know, some people take that too literally, like, oh, what a wimp, 400, but to me, that was about depression. That's what that's about to me. And I think people recognize that. And so when they say, I feel like Stoic in the cave, I know what they're talking about. I know why I would say that. Yeah.
And it's almost like mythical, I suppose, in that aspect. Someone sealing themselves in a cave for 400 years, it feels like it harkens back to Greek legends, myths, all that kind of thing. What stories that people have been telling for centuries, where it's very indicative of the sort of feeling as if you feel as if you want to lock yourself in a cave for 400 years. It's a very relatable feeling to some people. And also, I'd imagine it's quite powerful feeling to actually see people using your scenes as like lexicon in their daily life to sort of make sense of and provide narratives for their lives. It's quite, that's one of the reasons why stories can be so powerful, in my opinion. And to see that for your games, I imagine they'll be quite a heartening feeling.
Yeah, it is nice when people engage with it that much.
Ronove, would you like to answer this question, or we can move on if it's not one that you'd...
Oh, my answer is I don't give a lot of thought when I'm writing stuff. Like, so if I have a theme, I don't know about it. Except for maybe, like, I know, like, my visual novel, it's something with nihilism and existentialism, but that's, like, the only thing I can think of. So I'm not very big on knowing what I'm writing, what themes I'm probably writing. Volrath can probably do an educated guess because he's, seen a bunch of my stuff.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I have no idea.
Yeah, would you like me to do that or no?
It'd be fun.
I mean, I think what I've seen in a lot of her stuff is that something that she seems to come back to a lot is kind of the failure of systems that are designed, they're supposedly meant to protect people, but they end up doing the opposite. I think certainly Star Stealing Prince has a lot of that. Where
it definitely does.
He discovers that like his parents really screwed everyone over, and even though he thought the kingdom was fine, it most certainly was not. In a lot of the and I've read various short stories and stuff that she's written, and that does seem to be something that keeps coming up. So that'd be my take on it anyway.
I agree with this take, except it's not in my visual novel. So.
Well, it's not going to be 100%.
It seems like those themes would come up quite naturally then for you. You wouldn't really premeditate them, but you'd think of them from a very personal perspective of the character probably first, and then how they would feel about it, and then probably the themes would emerge. They'd be inherent, like implied in there, and then it would take someone like Volrath to kind of make them concrete and go, oh yeah, that's what I was thinking, yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, that's pretty much how I roll. It's like, it's there, I'm sure it is. I just don't, actually know it until somebody tells me.
It's very implied.
Yes.
And that's how some people can kind of work, I guess, is that a lot of your themes and stuff and a lot of the heady kind of things aren't so, intentionally thought about, but they come naturally through character and story, I suppose. It's very interesting. It's Totally Just Me, Clint asks, as a new person in making RPG Maker games, what kind of advice you'd give me? Oh, this sentence. What kind of advice would you give me in making games?
I would say you should make what you can with what you have. I think something that comes up is people get, they decide like if they don't have a certain piece of art, if they don't have a script, then they can't do it. And that I think, is unfortunate because then we're not seeing what they can do. And so I think, and I think that's kind of intensified a little bit now because it's become more common for, a small game to go commercial. People kind of come to this hobby immediately thinking that they're going to go commercial. And I should say, like, your first game is probably not going to be good enough to sell. I'm not trying to be a jerk. It's just, that's just kind of the way, I wouldn't have sold my first game, dear God.
My first game was Memento Vivere.
Oh, well,
clearly people still it.
Maybe that one you could have pulled off, but I think it's important to to just work with the engine as it is, and it's hard because I think the community sometimes stacks the deck against newcomers by saying like, oh, I'm not going to play a game that has RTP or that uses the face generator because they're too weird looking, and they are weird looking. I get it. But that's for somebody who can't like make their own faces or that's helpful. So I think if we had a space for people to kind of practice, I guess that would be good. I don't know if that means just like having a different section of game forms for like
first games.
Yeah, just like first games or like just to get the expectations under control. Because somebody who's just picking up the engine is not going to make this like amazing thing with all this custom stuff and blah blah blah, unless they're like Ronove and can do all the art themselves, which I'm very, very envious. But So that's, I would say, just make stuff. It's okay if you have to use placeholder graphics that you don't really like. It's okay if you don't have like all the scripts you wanted. Just make stuff. Show people like what you're good at. Focus on what you're good at, because that's if there's a secret to Master of the Wind, being popular, that's what it was. Is that we centered the whole thing around what we were good at, and it showed. If we made a game that was like art intensive, I wouldn't be here probably. So it's just, everybody's good at something, I think. So just figure out what that is, make a game with that in mind, and hopefully things will go from there.
Yeah, capitalize on your strengths.
Yeah, I echo all of that. That's why I'm making a visual novel.
Yeah. No need to use your weaknesses to create a game. I think that they can be a little bit of a trap sometimes.
I mean, you can learn from your weaknesses, but and remember with Omori, like you said earlier, I think that the person who is in charge, they've never made a game before. They didn't, and they might not have entirely known what went into a game, and see how long that took for them to get to the finish line. So it's like you're not going to make a game really quickly.
Yeah, and who better to help them out than Archeia? Someone with tons of experience in that
She
region
has so much patience.
Pair up.
I don't know how she has all the patience for this.
Yeah.
I would have just said, "Fuck you guys, I'm gone, bye," with the way some people treat her.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. These kinds of things are very important to think about when you're a new person making RPG Maker games in the scene. Yeah. Now that we've finished answering the questions, thank you to everyone for asking all these questions. We very much appreciate your input. Unfortunately, we couldn't answer them all, but thank you so much for asking anyway. We're going to move on to our next section, the deep dive. Welcome to the deep dive. In this section, we dive deep into one of each of our guest projects and figure out what went on during the process, inspirations, and elsewise. So yeah, for Ronove, we have a game called The Morning Star. I'll just give a quick kind of summary. Apparently, it starts waking up in a field off a 2-lane highway, which isn't the best start to anyone's night. You control the protagonist, Alec. It's a visual novel created in Renpi, not sure how to pronounce. It's cold, the wind's bitter, and Alec simply can't remember what happened earlier in the night. It must have been something big. And at least he finds a bus stop for shelter, but given it's a bus stop, he's not the only one there waiting. Ooh. Alec has two choices.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Alec has two choices before him. Ignore the stranger's attempts to converse. He could be a serial killer after all, and wait for the bus, or engage him. What else is there to do stranded at a bus stop? And see what happens. The choice is yours. So yeah, this project looks very interesting. I was very excited to see a Ronove project on RPGmaker.net after all this time, and yeah, and I know my friend Esby was also very excited. But yeah, it's a visual novel. It's already got about 5,000 words ready, apparently. Correct?
Yes.
You're
yes,
sort of
I'm halfway through.
Yeah. Yeah, so what kind of started this project? What was your thought process in starting with The Morning Star?
So I basically was like, I want to make something. Because I'm making something that I don't want to talk about right now. Please don't ask me about it. And I was like, wait, but nobody knows who I am anymore. So I'm like, I should do something. And I've been making friends with a bunch of RenP and visual novel people. And I played one recently that a friend of mine really liked. And I'm like, hey, I can do this. This doesn't seem too hard. So I set myself a goal. I said, okay, we're going to make something short. And I have 3 backgrounds and that's it. And then I wrote it in basically a weekend. I'm sorry. She thinks I took much longer than I did, but I did not. So yeah, it basically took me a weekend to get all the story down, and that's how it started. And then I started drawing.
So it's
RenP is interesting though, because I have tried visual novels in the past. Like Maladaptive Daydream was supposed to be a visual novel, and I gave up because that scope was way too big and I couldn't do it. So I had a bunch of menus and stuff that I'd already made. So I've just basically been like building off of what I already did like 3 years ago now, I think.
Okay. Yeah, so there's some kind of practice building some systems, or generally making it look really nice, and then you're like reusing those systems in this sort of visual novel aspect. And that kind of gives it like an insight into how quickly you're writing these things, because it says it's around like 10,000 words, and that was in a weekend?
About a weekend, yes.
Wow. Is that...
and it's like the story prompt, basically stranded at a bus stop, is one I have done before. So it's not like I haven't thought about this kind of setup before.
So it's already familiar.
So I just yeah. Mostly. This one goes off in a totally different direction than the other one I did. That's up on my short story website.
Yeah, there's something about a bus stop, I guess, that's quite evocative that you'd think.
Yeah, it's just this place that it just exists, and you're like, well, I'm just waiting.
Yeah.
And then, like, what do they call it, a liminal space or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where it doesn't quite feel real because all you're doing is waiting.
Waiting for something interesting to present itself.
Yeah.
And they do. But yeah, I'm interested to see how this kind of turns out. It's such a simple premise, yet it's very engaging, and you immediately kind of understand what it's about. It's just it's that process of meeting someone and trying to figure out what's going on. I suppose you've got that kind of amnesia aspect that you forgot what happened, and then maybe you start to remember the background. I'm not going to get into spoilers because I'm not going to ask you any questions that would inspire spoilers.
Okay.
Because this game probably out soon. But
soon,
yes,
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. But yeah, you usually write so quickly, because this is that would be like a few thousand words a day.
I mean, since it's like script writing, it really wasn't as writing heavy, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, because 10,000 words is not a lot, even though to a lot of people it probably seems like a lot.
Yeah. I think was it Stephen King who said he writes how many words a day?
Oh, dude, that dude probably finished like a 1,000-page novel in the time we've been talking.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's just, he is so prolific.
Yeah,
I wish I was that prolific.
Writes over 1,000 words a day, but being consistent every day, or at least every other day. He says the pressure to create perfect work will be alleviated because it's just another day's work, another 1,000 words.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I'm just like, no, I do bursts. I can't do the day-to-day thing because I just get distracted with drawing and stuff.
Mm. And I guess
so I don't know how I did this in about a weekend. I don't know. It was just there. One day it was there and I was done with it. And now I'm in Ren'Py working on it.
I guess that kind of comes to that co-proclivity kind of thing where you're writing and drawing at the same kind of,
yeah.
You go writing and I get bored of writing, I can draw a little bit, and then I got inspired by the drawing, I can write a little bit, sort of thing.
It helps.
I'll actually move on to we'll switch over to Volrath's game, which is a game called Legacy, which I know nothing about because I don't know where it is on the internet, if it is even on the internet.
It's nowhere, is why. If you were on Spungen in the early 2010s, you might have seen some of it, but
I missed that site.
Since then, I really haven't put much out there because it's basically what Legacy is. It's another Soulless game. It takes place 15 years after the events of Master of the Wind. So enough time for, a generation to have gotten older, basically. Because as you might have guessed from the title, it's about generations.
Oh.
And just generational change. And basically, there's a young man. His name's Bradley. He's unlike any protagonist I've done, in the sense that he's just quiet and shy and unassuming and nice.
This is my kind of protagonist.
Yeah, probably. And, because Shroud's a loudmouth, Stoic's grouchy, Eddie's, grouchy alcoholic. So this guy's just a sweet kid. And the idea is that it's not like Master of the Wind's a very linear, structured story. You don't get a lot of say in what you do or where you go. There's a little bit here and there, but for the most part, it's extremely linear. And this game, I wanted to try something different, which is the story kind of unfolds on a day-to-day basis, a bit like Homework Salesman in that sense. And you go, and he's just started class at this prestigious academy in the city of Gallia, which has a past as a genocidal empire, but is mostly kind of a normal city at this point. And you have your classes, and then after class, you can kind of go out in the world and just do stuff. And you have there's 6 classmates, and you can kind of pair up with them and go do stuff. And you pick who you want to hang out with every day. And then there's like a handful of maps that you can go and do stuff at. Now, my main inspiration for this one is the old Might and Magic games for the PC. And now it's not quite as open-ended as those games. As those games, it's literally you just start in a town. There's like barely any exposition, and you just start walking around. Not quite that. But I like the idea of just wandering wherever and just having to be careful, because if you go into the wrong place, the monsters will be too strong. So you have to kind of take it slow. But it's hard to do. It's hard to pull off.
Yeah.
And it's challenged me in a way that I like, where, you have to, like if I'm doing a quest, if I'm raiding a quest or doing like a story thing, I have to consider who is with Bradley.
Yeah.
And I have to have a potential dialogue option for all of them. So I have this conditional branch thing with all the different characters that I just copy. I'm always copy and pasting. I once joked to somebody that this game is actually called The Revenge of the Conditional Branch, because that's pretty much that's what most of it is. But it's very mapping intensive, which I'm not the best mapper, but VXA, it's not quite as important.
Because you want that feeling of wondering, right? So you need some maps to kind of back that up.
Yeah, and they're big maps, and sometimes I'll be like, for God's sake, why did I make this so freaking big? But usually I can come up with some stuff to put there, and I probably got about like 4 or 5 days of the game story, because it's goes from day to day, and the first 3 days are kind of like the tutorial basically. So it's, only 1 or 2 days of the real open world stuff. I'm only just starting to get to that. But it's been fun to work on, but I haven't worked on it consistently though. I have spells where I'm working on it a lot for a few months at a time, and then something happens and I wind up doing something else and playing other games. Like Christmas tends to be a roadblock, because I get all these new games, so now I'm playing those.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. I don't know if I'll finish it. Really, it's hard. I could see I could see there being a demo someday. If I can get there's a few scripting hiccups I have to figure out. I could probably use some help with that.
Well, no.
And just some other things to take care of. I could see there being a demo. I don't know if I'll ever finish the whole game, because it's a lot to take on. But it has been very fun to work on. So there's that.
I think even a demo would be cool to see how much like content, if you were to release a demo, how much content would you aim for, I suppose, in hours long?
Well, the nature of something that's more open world is that you can kind of keep yourself busy for a while. I really only have 2 of the big outdoor maps done. I have the whole city done, and the city is like gigantic. It's got 5 sections, like northwest, central, south, and east.
Nice.
Because that's the way, when you went to Gallia in Clean Slate back in the day, that's what it was like. So I felt like I had to kind of, make it consistent with that. So, but that took a long time.
Yeah.
And so, what do you call it?
There's that sense of exploration as well that you're wanting to bring off, and that kind of always finding interesting things to do. It's quite hard to pull off in games, so I commend you for it, that non-linear kind of... You talked earlier about the game that you brought, Immortals Fenyx Rising, where it has that similar sort of wandering, and you're finding stuff, and you're fighting, like the Breath of the Wild kind of style. Is that the kind of vibe that we can expect?
Well, it's not quite as open-ended as something like that. Like, because, if it's something that I'm working on, there is going to be like a story, because that's just,
Right.
But it's kind of just, a certain amount of it happens each day, and then you can go do what you want, or if you want to get on with the story, you just go home and go to bed.
Yeah.
But I think once I get into the deeper into the story, that'll be fun to do. Story-wise, it's not that far. Like, he's met his classmates, he's gone to, he's met his teachers, he's done the training exercise, which is like a tutorial dungeon, basically. Yeah. But eventually, he comes from a wealthy family, sort of Gallian aristocracy, and he learns, from his teacher, who's kind of a, progressive sort of teacher, like, how people always bitch about like indoctrination or whatever. It's that kind of scenario where it's somebody with an outside perspective who knows like what Gallia really was like. When you're living in Gallia, they like to sort of downplay that, but he doesn't. And, so Bradley learns a bit about his family that he doesn't like, and he sort of has to kind of cope with that. And some of his classmates can commiserate because they're also from like the aristocracy. And then there's the ones that like live in a shack in West Gallia, which is kind of like the poor section, who have a different take on it all. But so once I have a chance to explore those dynamics, I think I'll really enjoy that.
Yeah.
But it's very slow, a little bit at a time with that one.
Yeah. Making steady progress.
Sort of.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Intermittent progress there.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it.
Yeah. And as for, I suppose, I'll ask Ronove as well with the choice-related stuff and with regards to the Morning Star. Do you feel like that's something that you really enjoyed implementing, or is it maybe a little bit more linear, or because we mentioned about Legacy having different options, is that something you focused on when you were trying to make a visual novel, or were you just trying to, I suppose, tell a story with a few different endings?
So originally I did want it to be a little bit more open, like open as in you can make whatever choice you want and you're going to get an ending, depending, and the game keeps track with variables which ending you're going to get. But I quickly learned that you could get the one ending without actually seeing any of the story.
Oh.
And that's a problem because you need that story to understand that ending. So I've had to implement a few spots where it's like, well, if you do not pick, these two choices, you're not going to get that ending.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks because that wasn't my plan, but I'm not going to try to restructure the whole story so you get the whole story somehow by not choosing these choices.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
I think people expect that from a visual novel. If you choose the wrong choices, you'll get maybe the bad ending, the canonically sort of, you didn't get there.
Yeah, I hope people don't think of mine as a bad ending. I mean, there's not really a bad ending. It's just,
different.
Yeah, not the one that has the entire story.
Interesting. Oh, well then. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in both these games. They seem very cool.
Hey.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was maybe in general, if there's anything else we want to bring up about these games before we close out, any details you wanted the listeners to know, or
I don't. Yeah, I think I've said what I can say. This, I don't know when it's going to be. I don't know when there'll be a demo. I don't know when it'll be done, if it'll be done, but I have been working on it.
Yeah. The rest is confidential. You're not allowed to know. It's a mystery. Maybe Legacy will be Volrath's new Memento Vivere, where they keep asking him about Legacy. When's it coming out?
I got to put something out, though, to get that.
I mean, you have Master of the Wind. Come on. Where's the promised sequel? Or, I don't know if you actually talked about it outside of, the closed-knit community.
Wait, which one?
I actually have no idea. You've never talked really about it outside of Spongin, right?
No, not really.
Okay, well, now people know about it, and now they can harass you.
Well, I guess.
Where is it?
As for Legacy as well, is this... I forgot to ask one thing. You have done BroQuest before. Was it BroQuest?
Oh, yes.
Let me check that.
Yeah.
And that was that your first solo project, and this is kind of your second one, or have you done several before?
Well, it's the first solo thing that I released. I did, I was making games on my own, before Master of the Wind. Although, when Master of the Wind came out, a lot of people were asking me about Clean Slate because that was the prequel. So I did a Let's Play of that. And that's really the only way. That's really the only way that you can see it for now, because it's not a great game really. It's got some story stuff I like, especially near the end, but it's not Master of the Wind. That's apparent very quickly. But I did that so people who were really hardcore about wanting to know the lore details could see that. But yeah, BroQuest was the first one that I put out just by myself, and that was just that was a make a game in 5 days contest, and it was meant to be only RTP, so it was right at my alley. So I just put together this like goofy game about this like clueless bro who goes back in time and embarrasses everyone with his stupidity, and it was fun to write, and and Maki did some very funny pictures for it. So after the fact, so that was cool too.
Excellent, awesome. And then it culminates in Legacy, which might come out soon. It may not. You may never get to be able to see it, or you will. Demo soon. Thank you, Ronove and Volrath, for saying yes to being on the RPG Maker podcast. Let me say that again. The RPG Maker Cola podcast. I am very privileged to have both of you on here and speaking about your various thoughts and projects.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Fun.
I actually like to ask each of our guests one last thing. It's a short question, and it is this. If you had one thing to say to our listener, what would it be?
What, just anything?
Yeah, anything at all. Drink water. No.
Drink water. I like that.
I don't know, be nice to people?
Yeah.
I like that one too. Just, be nice to people. You might not like the thing that they're making, but you can still be nice to them. Or else you're just going to make them leave the community and maybe they'll have a cool project you'll never see.
That's true. That is true. I'm sure they have very much enjoyed having you on the podcast. And thank you, listener, for listening as well. Just patiently sitting there, just listening into our conversation. Yes, I have acknowledged you. I've broken the fourth wall. You are right there, sitting or standing. I don't know. I can't see you.
They could be doing a handstand.
Yeah, they could be. Oh, you're right. Oh, there's so many possibilities. Oh, it's scary. I won't think about it too long. And so, Ronove and Volrath, feel free to plug or promote anything you'd like here. How can we follow you on Twitter or various socials or any games that you'd like to promote?
I'm Volrath B on Twitter. B is for Blacksteel, which was the character's last name. I don't do a whole lot of game development stuff in there, though, so just be warned, that's mostly me just making smart-ass comments about American politics. So if you like that, then you might like it. But not a whole lot of game stuff on there. And for that, you'd probably want to go to solesgames.com, which that's where you can find Master of the Wind or whatever. They're also on rpgmaker.net.
And then my Twitter is just Earl Ronove, without a space. I talk about writing, art. I post writing, and occasionally game stuff. And that's pretty much it. That's where you can follow me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Renove's latest game, The Morning Star, give it a review, a comment, glowing review, a nice review. Be nice. Be honest, but be nice as well. I can't tell you what to do. You're your own person. And also, I'd like to note that Volrath has a blogspot called Norphen, Norphen, where lately they've ranked the Assassin's Creed series, and they write a whole bunch of stuff about various
Yeah, that's a lot
things.
of my movie stuff goes there. Occasionally game stuff, and it's very infrequently updated, though. Yeah.
And thank you, listener, for listening to RPG Maker Cola. I'd like to plug RPG Maker Cola, the podcast, the one you're listening to right now. Yes, you are supporting me and all the developers on here, and thank you so much for being so cool. You're very cool. That's all I can say about you. I'd like to be a great big hug, listener, if I could. And join the RPG Maker Cola Discord and follow the Twitter, because we love to be a community that supports games and developers and helps you achieve your dreams. So there's that too. Thank you so much, and we will sign off here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye.